I don't want to delay. I want to have the election. But I also don't want to have to wait for 3 months and then find out that the ballots are all missing and the election doesn't mean anything. That's what's going to happen, Steve. That's common sense. And everyone knows it. Smart people know it. Stupid people may not know it. And some people don't want to talk about it, but they know it. And no, we want to have an election where people actually go in and what's your name? My name is so-and-so. Boom, you signed the book like I've been doing for years. It's very, very unfair to our country. If they do this, our country will be a laughingstock all over the world because everyone knows it doesn't work.
And here we are, as I knew we would, continuing to have this discussion about whether Trump is going to seize power. He will seize power. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but we have to keep talking about it because the president knows how to troll his opponents, that's for sure, and get them completely crazy. Because remember, Trump supporters wouldn't be okay with that. This is what the libs don't understand. They really do believe that there's a Trump cult where nothing could ever turn us away from the president. No, if he loses the election, he loses the election, guys. I've never met a Trump supporter who's like, well, if he loses the election, he just wants to seize power. No, of course not. But that doesn't get psycho libs fired up. I mean, the truth and reality are not nearly as useful to them. So what you have instead, you have people like Jennifer Granholm, who I always remember from my time on the Bill Maher show. She was like, kids in cages, kids in cages. Just started screaming that at me. I was trying to have a conversation about health care for illegal aliens. I'm just like, okay, I don't know what, I don't know what you smoked before you came on this show, but kids in cages, this was the governor of Michigan. A total nincompoop. One thing that we keep seeing with politicians, and it is, I mean this, there are dumb Republicans. There are some who are pretty dumb. It's just the truth. I speak the truth on this show. But for every dumb Republican, and I mean somebody who just clearly is not very bright, who's a Republican, I'm talking about politicians now, a Republican member of Congress or governor or so on and so forth is not very bright. I really think it's 10-1. Democrat to Republican. Maybe you could argue with me and say it's 5-1, but I sit and I think about the members of Congress on the right. I'm like, okay, that guy's just not very smart. And I think about the Democrats that I know who are it's not even close. And Granholm here, I haven't even let you hear what she has to say. There's a part of me that will never really grasp how this woman was the governor of a large, serious state like Michigan. But then again, we got Cuomo here in New York. But it's because of his last name. It's like a family dynasty. Same reason his weightlifter brother has a TV show. So here you go with Granholm. Play clip 3.
As a governor, and there were a couple of governors who participated in this, the point of this exercise is that Trump has got a huge amount of power at his disposal. He's got the military, he's got the Secretary of State, he's got compliant Republicans. Hopefully they can be persuaded. But remember, elections are run by the states, and governors and secretaries of state in every single state right now should be doing one of these tabletop exercises to game out the worst case scenarios. What if Trump foments right-wing provocateurs and then sends out the military to put out the fire he created? What if he seizes the ballot boxes? What's the strategy to de-escalate protests? What do state elections officials do now to give the public the assurance that vote by mail is safe and doesn't inspire fraud? Yep. What do state elections officials do now if he defunds the post office, for example? So those things have to be happening right now at the state level.
Yes, let's have a really serious conversation about what do we do if Trump decides we're going to spend the entire federal budget on time travel. What do we do if Trump thinks that we're all moving to Mars in December? What do we do? How much dumber can it get? Oh, yeah, states should all be wargaming. States should be spending their budgets wargaming the possibility of Trump using the military to seize ballots and steal the election. This is a person who was the governor of a large state and is treated with seriousness by Democrats. And you all understand how that would work, right? If Democrat states start spending parts of their budget on this complete fantasy that Donald Trump is going to seize, nobody would let him. The military wouldn't let, nobody would go along with this. That's what they don't understand. We're not them. We actually believe in rules and morals. We believe in contracts. We don't just think it's whatever. There is no truth. There is no objective reality. It's just whatever you can get away with based upon what makes you feel good and the power you want. That's the Democrat approach. We don't do that, right? What happened when Mitt Romney lost the 2012 election? Let's look at some examples here. What happened when Mitt Romney lost the 2012 election? I was at Glenn Beck's studio in D.C. I'm sorry, in Dallas. And I was working at the Blaze at the time. And yes, when it finally happened, I did say a couple of off-air salty words because I was like, I can't believe Obama got 4 more years after his horrible stewardship of the economy. But he did. And that was it. And it was like, all right, Obama's the president, guys. That was, game over for Romney. And Romney, of course, was a kind of a fake Republican anyway. He was good on immigration. I know Romney now with the BLM stuff and hating Trump he's much more of a narcissist and an arrogant guy. His whole, oh gosh, I'm just Mitt Romney and I'm just so friendly and No, this guy's a shark. He's just good at hiding it. But it makes perfect sense. This guy was a private equity baron, made himself hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not because he's such a sweetheart. All right. It's not because he's so concerned with the working man. But I do think he would have been a better president. I don't regret my vote for Romney over Obama because he would have been better than Obama. But I never thought Romney was some fantastic, game changer of a politician. That's for sure. But we lost that. The Republicans lost that election, and the world went right back to, okay, what do we do now? The next day, there was no, Obama cheated. Let's go to court. Let's have all this. There was Russian interference and all this stuff. What happened in 2016? Oh, all of that, right? Trump cheated, stole the election, Russia, insane. 2000, what happened there? Oh, that's right. Went all the way to the Supreme Court because the Democrats kept trying to cherry pick certain places to count more ballots and count them a certain way so they could just get ahead of Bush in Florida and declare Al Gore the president. Supreme Court said enough of that. You either are going to do a full recount of everything on the schedule allowed or you're not going to do it. And then they claimed that was stolen. Democrats are the crybabies about elections. This is what history tells us. They're the ones that can't handle it. Republicans go, okay. And it's really because of what I've been saying that Democrats view politics as a religion. Very interesting data that I wanted to share with you on that note, because this is what happens. I'll say Democrats are a bunch of godless commies, and I'm trying to be a little provocative, but there's also a lot of truth in that, right? So, I know that that's too broad and sweeping a statement. It is fun to say, though. It brings a smile to my face because it gets at an underlying truth. If they're going to run around saying Republicans are all racist, I'm just going to remind them, because there are some racist Republicans, but I think there's a tiny, I think it's, less than 1% of the Republican Party is actually racist. And I think that there's an equal percentage of Democrats that are racist, whole other conversation. But, well, it all depends on how you describe racism. I think there are a lot more Democrats that are racist than they realize, but they just think that, if we change the laws to help people who, we don't think are necessarily going to be able to compete in a meritocracy, that's not racist. We're the good people for doing that. Really? Conservatives, Republicans, we're the ones who say we believe that anybody of any skin color, any ethnicity, any background can compete on a fair playing field. We don't think that you have to give one set of standards for one group and another set of standards for another group. I think there's a case to be made that it's kind of racist to have different standards for people based upon their ethnicity. But regardless, the data that I saw, and it just came up last night because I've been telling you that, I actually think it's fair that the Democrats are increasingly view their political beliefs as it's a religious movement. And I'm trying to find the data in real time, but I'll tell you what it was, and then when I can find it, I'll give it to you more specifically. So here we go. We have, if you are talking about Democrats overall, this was what was, if you're talking about Democrats overall, there's not that much difference when you look at church attendance between Democrats and Republicans. Now, I know church attendance is not a perfect proxy for how religious a person is and so on and so forth, but I do think that it's a meaningful way to look at the data. And so this is why Democrats will say, how dare you call us godless commies? We got to, all right, well, but really, you know who the godless commies are in the Democrat Party? White Democrats. If you take the non-white Democrats out of the equation when you're talking about religion and church attendance, all of a sudden Republicans are about 4 times as likely to go. Now, obviously, this is about Christians specifically, but 4 times as likely to go to church and be serious about their religion as Democrats. So the godless commies, when I refer to Democrats as godless commies, I'm actually talking about white Democrats. They're the godless commies in this equation. And the data actually supports that. They're the ones that have just embraced. They're either nominally religious for social reasons, but not really, or are straight up atheists or agnostics or whatever they want to call it. And why is that relevant to this discussion? Because their politics are a replacement for that sense of need, belonging, and purpose that comes from religious belief. Which is why when you say, hey, you guys are enforcing 2 sets of rules on COVID, they'll just look at you and scream, kids in cages, kids in cages. And you look at them and say, what happened to you? Like, have you had some kind of an episode or something? What's going on here? I can't believe we're losing our home that we didn't sell. That's what Deborah said when she found out that she was the victim of home title theft, which is a crime that can actually cost you your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your home's title online. Then they forge your signature stating that you sold your home to them. You often won't find out about this until either payments show up or they just send you an eviction notice. You got to go with Home Title Lock if you want to be protected from this growing crime. Home Title Lock can protect you by creating a virtual barrier around your home's title. Don't wait. Don't find out when it's too late. Go today to HomeTitleLock.com. Use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. Again, go to HomeTitleLock.com and you can find out if you're already a victim of this and don't even know it. HomeTitleLock.com and use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. What's it like to be a white liberal these days with white liberals telling you what you're allowed to believe and think? And this applies as well to non-liberals. But what are the things that white liberals want white people across the board to not just be taught, be indoctrinated with, and be forced to agree with? You'll perhaps recall a few weeks ago, a fellow, I talked about this on the show, a fellow named Christopher Rufo, who's the director of Discovery Institute Center on Wealth and Policy. He decided to do a public records request for what they're training. I mean, Seattle's the place where they had the autonomous zone and they've had all this lunatic left-wing protester stuff. So he wanted to see what the training is for Seattle public employees. What are they learning? Taxpayer dollars going toward this training. And what are these city employees being taught is the way that they're supposed to do their jobs and so on and so forth. And so that brings me to the Seattle Office of Civil Rights and their race and social 10,000 city employees. So 10,000 employees of the city of Seattle being taught this. He obtained the documents, Christopher Rufo did, from the city's segregated whites only training, which is so they separate out now white only employees in Seattle for this. You can't make this stuff up, which induct white employees in, as he writes, the cult of critical race theory. This is Christopher Rufo's thread here. The training is called internalized racial superiority for white people. After attendees arrive, they must announce their, this is the actual training. He has the slides. They must announce their pronouns and tell the trainers when they first became race conscious. In other words, when they began their journey of internalized racism. According to the Office of Civil Rights, white employees must process their white feelings of sadness, shame, paralysis, confusion, and denial. Then they must take action to redistribute resources, change who's in power, and alter institutions. So that's right. White people are trained by the taxpayers, on the taxpayers' dime in Seattle, to deal with their white shame and guilt and paralysis and sadness. Can you imagine if you stood up at this and you were to say, excuse me, Bob, I'm white and I don't feel sadness, shame, and paralysis over my whiteness, so perhaps you could help me achieve the proper degree of shame over my whiteness. I just want to put that out there and thank you for your time today. I guess the trainers would tell you, well, just go watch a lot of MSNBC or CNN. You'll be indoctrinated in your white shame in no time. Rufo's thread here continues. Next, white employees must examine their relationships with white supremacy, racism, and whiteness. They must explain, this is in the slides, folks. This is the actual training given to all these employees. They must explain how their families benefit economically from the system of white supremacy, even as it directly and violently harms black people. In the next two reflections, the trainers ask the white employees how their white fragility is showing up at work and how their white silence causes harm to black people. All white employees are expected to share examples of their own racism. My friends, this is publicly. You are mandated, imagine this, you are a city employee in Seattle. You are mandated by your job to be there. I did all kinds of training when I was at the NYPD, and some of it was dumb as all heck, but I was told I had to be there. I had to do all this sort of, don't sexually harass training. Sit there and, Bob walks in, hey there, Sally, looking cute in that dress. And it's like, dun, dun, dun. And some guy shows up. Do not tell Sally she looks cute in her dress. Like, I don't really need to watch this stuff. But anyway, I had to sit there and watch it, right? No choice. No choice. You're forced to watch it. This is the same thing in Seattle. You're being told to share stories of your own racism. I mean, this is cult indoctrination, right? You self-deprecate, you self-negate, you go through this ritual of a cleansing of your own evil and your own lack of worth. And then the people around you, of course, all have this to hold over you that now you've talked about your racism. Oh, there's more. The Office of Civil Rights in Seattle then claims that white people internalize the system of white supremacy through the racist values of individualism, intellectualization, objectivity, and comfort, and that those values must be abolished from the work of city government. That's right. They want to tell you that to overcome racism, we must abolish individualism and intellectualization. I got to tell you, that's really racist. For trainers, and I'd bet that the trainers here, just like the author of White Fragility is white, I bet the trainers for this program are probably, at least some of them are white themselves. And for them to be telling a room full of people that intellectualization is a white characteristic that must be banished from public work, that's racist. Unsealed documents show Epstein and Maxwell correspondence in 2015. That's the story up on NBC News right now. A lot of places covering this. Attorneys for Maxwell have argued that she hadn't had any contact with the accused sex trafficker for more than a decade. Here's just let's get into the details of this. You got a trove of court documents unsealed Thursday night that appear to show that the late accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein was in contact with his now charged confidant Ghislaine Maxwell in 2015. Attorneys for Maxwell, who was arrested July 2nd, have argued that she hadn't had any contact with Epstein for more than a decade and is the target of overzealous prosecutors. Uh-oh, this is not good for Maxwell's team here. In one email between Epstein and Maxwell in 2015, Epstein appears to be composing a draft statement for Maxwell to release publicly. The date in January 2015 is a few weeks after one of Epstein's alleged victims, Virginia Roberts Guffrey, first shared her story with a British newspaper. In another typo-filled email a few days later, dated January 25th, Jeffrey E. writes, quote, "You have done nothing wrong, and I would urge you to start acting like it. Go outside, head high, not as an escaping convict. Go to parties, deal with it." So she's got an issue here. The unsealed documents also contained, and this is from a defamation case filed against Maxwell in 2015 by Guffrey, who has alleged that Epstein sexually abused her. The documents Thursday also contain allegations that Jane Doe 3, allegations who match those of Guffrey, was forced to have sexual relations with Prince Andrew on Epstein's private island in what was described as an orgy with numerous other underage girls. It does not specify the year. The woman was allegedly instructed by Epstein to give the prince whatever he demanded and report back to him on the details of the sexual abuse. All right. So now, here we go. We've got more documents out there that raise a lot of the same Epstein questions we've been asking all along here, but here's one part of this. How did the justice system fail so many young girls so horrifically? And how could somebody as brazen in his abuse and someone so clearly guilty, how could that person get away with this for as long as he did? Now, this is where we get into these documents, the specifics of them. And you have, this is according to the Technofog blog on Twitter, who's got a huge following, does a lot of legal, he's a lawyer, does a lot of legal analysis online. And it's just one of these, and actually gets a lot of attention for it. And then this was actually a tweet from Mike Cernovich, I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Men who Ghislaine Maxwell directed, according to these documents, directed Virginia Guffrey to engage in activities with, and this is from Guffrey's deposition, Alan Dershowitz, Glenn Dubin, Stephen Kaufman, Prince Andrew, Jean-Luc Brunel, Bill Richardson, Marvin Minsky, other names, many more names redacted. What are those other names? Who are those other names? My friends, this is one of these cases where the early conspiracy theories were even less outrageous than what we're finding out are true, right? I mean, this goes beyond what I think even some of the people who in the early stages of this had thought it was bad. Oh, this is really bad. Really bad for the Justice Department, and very bad in terms of how high up this goes and how egregious some of these offenders seem to have been. Look, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I mean, technically Epstein, I know this is a horrible thing, but you got to, technically Epstein is still innocent until proven guilty. The guy never actually, well, not innocent of the initial, when he took a plea bargain, but I mean the charges that the feds were going to send him away to the rest of his life in prison for, that's all still alleged, even though do we say he was suicided in prison? Is that the proper way to say it? Another thing from this Technofog blog here online, in one witness interview, it is said that Bill Clinton was at Epstein's Island with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and 2 young girls. Bill Clinton spent a lot of time with this guy. Now, you've got to ask, what lengths would the legal and political establishment in America go to protect the Clinton name? when, remember, it was expected that Bill Clinton's wife was going to be the president of the United States in 2016. So it's 2012, 2013. And everyone knows Hillary's going to run again. After Obama was done, everyone knew Hillary was going to run. What would they have been willing to do to protect him? Now, Bill Clinton, there is not yet an on-the-record allegation of sexual impropriety involving these underage girls. There's a mountain of sexual impropriety against Bill Clinton that's already proven in the past. You got to remember that. Including criminal allegations of sexual assault, credible criminal allegations of sexual assault. But I think you have to look at this and all the stuff that's coming about Epstein and remember that we're not hearing from the libs, from the left, from the Democrats about how women have that victims and women have a right to be believed on this one. Why is that? Why is it that doesn't apply here? Now, I'm somebody who's always rejected. I don't like this presumption of guilt approach, but Democrats do. Democrats have been pushing this. They certainly pushed it against Kavanaugh with the preposterous allegations against him, and they continue to push this when it suits them. Why not here? Well, when you start to look at that list and you look at some of the names that are involved and you say, I can guarantee you this, my friends. If it were a list with mostly prominent Republicans on it, we would be hearing a very different tone about these allegations from the media. We all know this, right? We understand. Can you imagine if there was any actual, even unnamed, but on the record allegation of sexual impropriety from any of these girls? And I think it is fair. Well, they were girls at the time against Donald Trump. It's all you would hear about every day from now until the election. It's all you would hear. It would be constant. It would actually be even more than the COVID thing for a while. They'd probably go back to it, but no, there's nothing like that. No one has ever said that Donald Trump engaged in any sexual impropriety of any kind with any of these Epstein trafficked victims. But there are a bunch of other people who have been either directly implicated or very closely associated with some of these activities. And you've just got to wonder, there's such a lack of curiosity in the media about this. It's almost like they're afraid of what they might find. It's almost like the media apparatus in America and the power that is wielded by those who control news media and journalism, they understand at some level that if they really dig into this, it's not going to help their team. It's not going to help their team. And that's what they care about first and foremost. Not going to help them out. And so the girls, the victims here, not as important as making sure the team gets a win or doesn't get a loss. And then the other side of this is the legal component. I watched the Epstein documentary on Netflix. It was, I've got to tell you, I thought it could have been a lot more powerful than it was, and it was very clear that Patterson, the guy behind it, the famous author, is a friend of Bill Clinton's, because they were like, yeah, Bill Clinton went to Pedophile Island and hung out with this guy and everything on, but is not really. Everyone thinks that he was innocent. That's basically what they say in the documentary, based on what I'm not exactly sure, but that's what they say. That's the pitch. That's the approach. And I've just got to, as a guy, I know that it's very unlikely that Bill Clinton, an established sexual predator, and Epstein, an established sexual predator, we're really going to think they didn't have conversations. They just put aside what you've been told by everybody else. We're going to assume that Bill Clinton, when he was talking to Epstein, he wasn't like, hey, I like pretty girls, you like pretty girls, what's going on here? They didn't discuss that? Yeah, they're just talking about climate change all the time? Is that what they really want us to believe that? They're socializing, extensively, spending a lot of time together with really nobody else around and nobody else paying attention to what's going on. And it never came up that Epstein was having this parade of young girls to this island all the time. And Bill Clinton was never like, what's going on here? Oh, I have no idea. Sorry, folks. I just don't buy it. Now, I don't know if Bill Clinton himself engaged in any illegal acts or not. I don't know that, and it would be unfair to say that. It would be incorrect to say that. But I find it not credible that Bill Clinton was unaware of what a scummy disgrace Epstein was when it came to women and a criminal. I don't find that credible. I just simply do not. And remember this, because the media does not want to repeat it. They don't want this to come to mind. Donald Trump is the only person we know of who took action on the record against Epstein in a social setting because he was grossed out by him. Fact. The only one. You're done. You're out of Mar-a-Lago. You were hitting on a 14-year-old girl, a daughter of a member. You're gone. Banished. Now, I know that's not a 20-year federal prison sentence, but who else did anything? Everybody else was going along for it. Look, Donald Trump likes beautiful women. There's no question about that. But every indication we've ever seen about Donald Trump is that he likes beautiful women. There's nothing that we see in his past that shows an inclination toward anything similar to what Jeffrey Epstein and that world was engaged in. Some of the other people that are implicated in this, there's the Prince Andrew photo. There's no photo of Trump, with his arm around a 16 or 17-year-old girl in a way that suggests they're real close. Doesn't exist. I wonder if there are any photos of Bill Clinton that we haven't seen yet. There was a huge surveillance operation, and somehow we haven't gotten anything out of it yet. I haven't seen anything. That's what. Look, Ghislaine Maxwell. I can't tell you that I'm 100% confident that she's going to make it all the way to trial. I don't know what's going to happen, but there are the most powerful people in the world. In some ways, are some of the most powerful people in the world are implicated in this whole thing. And think what they'd be willing to do. Anything. They're willing to do anything to make this stop. And we all know about what happened with Epstein and the MCC and how we're supposed to believe that situation just happened. Oh, I kind of like the overconfidence that some of the libs are having right now about Donald Trump. I like that we're seeing them say, oh, he's definitely going to lose. Fake Republican Joe Scarborough, for example. Play clip 5.
He really knows he's going to lose this fall. He's sending the message to Republican senators, I'm going to lose. After this happened yesterday, Republican senators were aghast that this was, in effect, Donald Trump throwing in the towel, making excuses already for his loss for an election that's 98 days away? And he's already throwing in the towel. So he's already talking about doubting the validity of November's elections because he knows he's going to lose.
Exactly what they were saying, exactly what all the libs and the fake conservatives were saying about Trump going into the 2016 election. So I like to hear this. I like when Democrats are overconfident in how Trump has already lost, because for one, it shows us that they never learn, right? They never learn humility. They never learn lessons from history or from the past. But beyond that, it's just the kind of deja vu that I want. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Keep saying he's definitely going to lose. And also, can we have more crazy Democrat talking points about how he's worse than Kim Jong-un and he's a dictator and all this other stuff? Play clip 11 here.
This president is absolutely outrageous in the way that he carries out the playbook of third world countries with dictators. This business of delaying the election, Congress is not going to delay any election, and he should know that by now. But when he sends out his, paramilitary troops into Portland, when he aligns himself with Putin, when he says he loves Kim Jong-un, this is all about the president, this would-be dictator in our country who is using the tactics of dictators, particularly in third world countries. And so he is to be ignored.
He is a third world dictator. There we go. More of that. Let's have more of the crazy talk coming from Democrats about how Trump is basically already subverting the election. I like to hear that sort of nonsense from them. Oh, and what do Democrats think of actual authoritarians and totalitarians? They pretend whenever Trump comes up that they have such a big problem with it. But here's Dianne Feinstein, who didn't she have a driver who was like a spy for China for a long time? Here she is on China, play 10.
In the words of my predecessor speaking, we hold China as a potential trading partner, as a country that has pulled tens of millions of people out of poverty in a short period of time, and as a country growing into a respectable nation among other nations. And I deeply believe that.
Yep. Always going to be weak on China. Just remember that about the Democrats. They talk a big game about how they don't like authoritarianism, but China, they like a lot. No problem with it whatsoever.